10th, 2026. We are going to get started today with our daily collective reading. We are going to be doing a harmonic energy update. Can I please get the first two cards in our 5-card spread? First two cards we are starting our day off with today are the Empress card in its reversal in combination with the Four of Pentacles in its reversal. This card right now has been coming up a lot. And we're going to talk a little bit about this. And I need to stress this because when I see there are some cards that I see as point of caution, and this is one of those cards that I often see as a point of caution, and it has to do with making assumptions. It has to do with making assumptions because one of the things that we talk about in relationality to working towards healthy manifestation goals, feelings, not things. Okay. And I think that's going to be really important. Feelings, not things. And that doesn't mean, right? That doesn't mean that when you move towards a manifestation goal, there isn't something that you energetically prioritize. But the ability to understand the energetic intention by which one moves towards something helps to fortify direction, right? Intention fortifies direction, and the ability to effectively articulate upon what our intentions are allow us to be able to see things in different ways. And we talk about this. This is why there's all those conversations about why coveting is so bad, right? Because the modality by which you want to control something, right? The modality by which you want to control something literally blocks manifestations from coming forward, right? And we see this. The ability of understanding and finding energetic harmony is the modality by which you work towards things. And when you're energetically working towards things, you take adaptable approaches, right? When we think about the space by which there is an energetic universe around us that is effectively working with us, then the modality by which we feel energetic hardship or frustration, we articulate upon what it is that is more ideal. And then the modality by which we effectively work through things, or the modality by which we articulate upon the energetic frustration by which we're able to amplify and articulate upon our needs getting met, is how we effectively do things better. Now, this is really important because, and I want to describe what we're effectively seeing here, particularly and especially. One of the things that we identify is having to understand and build into what it feels to take loving approaches to things, right? Because the modality or the enforce of intention by which we bring towards love towards things articulates and amplifies the source of our intention. And what do you often notice in relationality to those that don't hold a lot of love for themselves, right? We don't hold a lot of love for ourselves, we feel that we need to effectively prove ourselves, right? But when we're building into the context of being able to articulate or amplify or allow the space by which we effectively grow or thrive, then that ability of being able to articulate the energetic feelings by which we're effectively putting our force of intention towards things allows the adaptability by which others can find us in that same locationality. And so, what we effectively see and identify that's happening right now is, and I want to describe this because we're going to talk about how it's potentially affecting the energetic relationships that are forming right now. And we're going to start specifically with speaking upon the energy that is in solitude right now. And those relationships that are in solitude were effectively the relationships that we're identifying as the world partnerships. And the reason we're identifying them as world partnerships is because they are effectively working through the lessons of the card that we identify as the world card in the tarot, which talks about the understanding that the quality of our relationships, right? The way that we effectively fix relationships is by fixing the way that we effectively approach our own self. Because the only amount of compassion that we can give others is as much approximate to what we give ourselves. So these are a lot of the energies that are taking compassionate approaches as it relates to the care of the self, right? the journey of love that we start within inwards that immediately expresses itself outwards. And so for a lot of these relationships, what we're effectively identifying that's occurring during this time is we see two different modalities that are effectively happening for the energy that is in solitude. This either the space by which they're going inward in order to fix something outward, right? Because it's the ability to be able to identify the compassion that they are effectively finding within that is allowing them to be able to articulate what their ideal relationship is. While simultaneously, we also see new relationships that are coming together built upon mutual articulation of aspired direction. And this is why we talk about this is we're going to get into it, right? This is why it's so important that when you're building into healthy relationship, a conversation in terms of direction should never be the last conversation you have. It should always be the first because your manifestation goal as it relates to relationship acts as shield. And the ability for another person to effectively articulate a shared desire for the same type of relationship that you yourself aspire to have allows for the ability for something to be able to effectively grow and thrive. And so, what we're effectively identifying there is for a lot of these energies, what do we see that's happening? These are energies that are stepping out of their comfort zone in terms of being able to do that. That's an amplification of what we see in relationality to Taurus stationing direct. I mean, apologies, Uranus stationing direct in Taurus, because what does Uranus in Taurus say to us, right? Pesky thing with comfort zones. The only way to get stronger with something is to navigate discomfort, right? That is the sound of us getting energetically stronger. And this is why we see that these are energies that are starting in the modality of talking about something that they recognize and identify they feel vulnerable about. But it's that vulnerability that is amplifying that they're getting stronger because even in the space by which they're articulating it, right? They're moving into depth that they would typically not reach until later in partnership. But this is the energy that says that that depth is something that you identify prior to make sure that there's no misconceptions as it relates to healthy direction. So we also see, and I want to describe this though, we just have to be, we have to pay a lot of attention to this because there's something else that's happening right now. And it happens every time Saturn moves into Aries, right? And it's a continuation of understanding the most important lesson. Center card for today's spread. Center card, please. We've got here the Six of Cups in its reversal. And what does the Six of Cups in its reversal say to us, right? Emotions don't fix things. Emotions don't fix things. Directions fix things. Right? And the misconception that often happens, and this is why it's important for us to be in the modality of being able to look at our emotions, but understand. And we also have this coming through right now. The reason that we identify that not all emotions are alike, right? And I know that this is going to sound like a bit of a band-aid rip moment, but this is what we mean when we articulate that just because we feel an emotion doesn't necessarily mean that we have to honor it. Because you have to understand that the root word of honoring is understanding the significance of what you're energetically carrying. And you'll notice that for those who don't honor the emotions, they make their emotions others' responsibility to sort out, right? Like that is what we identify as the projection of the emotion, right? Being like, I have emotions. They're your responsibility to figure out, not mine. That's not true. That's not somebody honoring their emotions, right? Honoring the emotions, we take time with our emotions to sort them out, to understand why they're energetically valuable, right? And the modality by which we understand the value of those emotions allow us to communicate their import to each other. So what we effectively see is, and I want to describe this because I feel like this might be happening for some energy in solitude right now because it still feels very connected to some of those world partnerships. The identification that the best relationship that you've ever found will make you feel things that you've never felt before. And this is why we understand that the ability to navigate or feel our emotions, when we think about healthy relationship, we feel it, we identify it as a pathwork of energetic preparation. Because when we feel stable and secure in our emotions, we're effectively articulating to another that we can take more of them, right? And that identification, that adaptability, right? The ability of understanding the space within by which we identify and recognize our own energetic strengthening. We see that for a lot of those relationships, that ability or navigating through, right? And I want to identify this. I see some of these energies in separation and solitude right now, navigating the situation of energy from the past, potentially trying to come back, articulating upon emotions, right? Emotions as if the emotions are going to fix something, but emotions, the identification that emotions exist, don't fix anything. They often overcomplicate things. And this is what we mean by the overcomplication of those who have not done the work to understand and recognize emotions, being able to effectively articulate or find that healthy direction sense that allows the ability of being able to define where we can find more or where we can build into those points of energetic expansion. So we see that for a lot of those energies right now, sorting through, like, and I want to describe this, and I think that this is important too. For a lot of these energies that are moving into new relationship right now, I can see a situation by which they're still sorting through a lot of complicated emotions related to traumatizing situations. But this is why we talk about we never wait to heal to proceed into something further, because you have to understand the shape of trauma is we can't let go of it, right? This is why often we come through the falsity of trauma as block, right? Trauma is sticky pain, right? And when we identify trauma as sticky pain, right? Something that we wish we could shed, if only we could, right? Then we recognize that the journey of being able to identify and move through things is the space by which we ourselves are able to identify that we are getting stronger, right? That we are getting stronger within them. And so what we see, and I like to see this for some of the energy in solitude right now, energy that is articulating the fact that while they feel energetically conflicted or complicated, they're also getting stronger in their trauma, which is the identification point of understanding the nature of trauma is such that it always makes us feel complicated, right? If it was clearer, it wouldn't be trauma, right? If it was clear, it wouldn't be trauma. And then understanding the nature of that is what is allowing a lot of the energy to continue forward in such a way that they're building into the space of understanding and defining the ability of working through something that was energetically painful, but also finding the strength of purpose to effectively move through and come out the other side of it is what we keep on seeing. So that's a lot of, and I think it's really beautiful because seeing that much energy right now, and I wanna describe this. This is like the opposite of some of those moon relationships that we were identifying, because I wanna just point this out. Like, those moon relationships, and we're gonna get to them in a minute, those moon relationships are only now starting to really deepen an energetic connection because they were coming together during all of that retrograde season. 2 more cards right now for those moon relationships. And just to clarify, for those who are here for the first time, the moon relationships that we're effectively speaking upon are specifically the lessons that we saw that were happening in relationship between the time of the most recent Capricorn new moon, so January 18th, leading into early this fall, so September 6th, which is when we saw Uranus going retrograde. 2 more cards, please. We've got here the 7 of Pentacles in its reversal in combination with our Magician card in its reversal. So, what are we effectively identifying and working through? And we're going to talk about this. For a lot of those moon relationships, I keep on seeing, and I want to describe this. This is a lot of, these are relationships that are building into the context of feeling the energetic stability of a relationship by which there is what we identify as the healthy fabric of partnership. And I want to describe what we're effectively seeing here because those relationships, the energy I see in those relationships is absolutely tireless. They are absolutely tireless. They are the type of energy that is perpetually working on things outside of the self. And I need to stress this. They're very, very purpose driven. It's very, very purpose driven energy. And what we're effectively identifying with a lot of that purpose driven energy is that modality or that experience by which they've often carry wounds where they have been trying to fulfill their purpose and they've lost relationships because another person took their purpose personally, right? The modality that often identifies or articulates a lack of alignment in the space of another person, articulating that the purpose was standing in the way of a relationship. But this is why I see that something tremendous is healing in some of those moon relationships right now, because the ability of the energy to be supportive, right? To be supportive, but not only be supportive, not feel, right? Not feel the need to perpetually be in a state by which there's an over focusing, right? The ability of being able to feel the sense of being within the state of the authentic self by which there's, I keep on hearing like attentive. These are attentive partnerships by which they are effectively identifying and orienting upon each other in such a way that they're able to articulate or identify how to find one's needs being met. I keep on seeing that these are the relationships by which something is potentially profoundly healing. And the profound healing that we see that's happening right now is understanding that purpose does not get in the way of healthy relationship so long as purpose finds purpose, right? And so that identification point of feeling that same sense of integration, it's allowing for an expansion, but there's a lot of emotionality that may be coming up in the same experience because as they're finding it, what are they also finding? They're being able to finally put words into everything that was happening before it, right? So it's like, and this is going to bring us to the temperance relationships. And the temperance relationships, for our purposes, were the relationships such as lessons that we were going through between September 6th. So that was the time that Uranus went station retrograde up until the solstice period that we experienced this summer. So that was June 21st of last year. Clarification between the Empress card in its reversal in combination with that Four of Pentacles in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with the Knight of Cups in its reversal. And what do we see with the Knight of Cups in its reversal? The Knight of Cups in its reversal effectively articulates to us upon situations or circumstances by which we identify and recognize. And I need to stress this right now. One of the things that we see that is potentially happening for a lot of those temperance relationships was the identification of an energetic, I want to describe it as the best way there's no word for it. Maybe there's a word that I'm not aware of, but the best way I can describe it is a trauma wall. It's a trauma wall within the self. And what do I mean by a trauma wall within the self? A partition that they energetically created within themselves that was necessary at a time by which they were navigating a trauma environment, right? The identification point of something that they felt within themselves that was keeping the self energetically safe, because this is the journey that we often experience with trauma. The hard part about trauma is does not trauma does not eviscerate, it partitions, right? It closes the self off to the self. And in the modality by which we often build those protective layers within ourselves, we often see and experience and identify that this is why we talk about the journey of healing is often the journey of becoming whole. And the whole which we identify the whole version of self, the self that feels energetically complete, right, is identifying and recognizing the source by which we had to navigate situations or places or spaces by which we did not feel that the complete version of ourself was in a space of energetic safety or belonging. And so this is what we see and identify is occurring for a lot of that energy right now. working through those modalities or experiences by which they're building into a deeper comprehension of self. But the comprehension that is gaining them modality of internal attention, being able to see or recognize an energetic limitation that they might not have effectively experienced or seen before, but having to be getting to be in a relationship by which they feel the authenticity of being able to be in the full integration of self. It's being able to help one understand or see one's own energetic limitations. And it's not easy, right? It potentially may be creating those modalities of frustration because often we feel very vulnerable for good reason when we identified those effective spaces by which we felt we had to be protective. So this is a lot of the energy that is effectively identifying or opening up more or feeling more in a space of putting compassion, right? Putting compassion in the state by which they first recognized that energetic block was formed. Now, this is effectively bringing us back to those energies that are in solitude right now. Clarification between the Four of Pentacles in its reversal in combination with our Six of Cups in its reversal. Can I please get one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Three of Swords in its reversal. And so what do we effectively see with the Three of Swords in its reversal? And we can just talk about this a bit. The Three of Swords in its reversal. I like to see a Three of Swords in its reversal, right? But it's not easy. Okay? It's just a conversation. It's a conversation that's a space that understands it's difficult to heal, right? Healing is a journey of a lifetime. We're never finished healing. And often, and I want to describe this, there's something really important that we see in the identification of the difference between something that feels energetically indulgent versus something that actually feels healthy. And often, this is the space by which we identify that something that is healthy is not built upon or based upon avoidance, right? The modality by which we sometimes take a space of obliqueness, right? The modality by which we ourselves work through the identification of energetically avoiding things. This is what we often see and recognize in the experience of working through the understanding of being able to identify vulnerability, right? In order to move towards perfection, you must first identify that you're not perfect. And once we effectively eliminate the feeling of trying to be perfect, but we look at it in the space of perpetually perfecting, then we understand and recognize that that is a gift that we bring towards everything, right? Because what happens, right? The space by which and we often have to go through this. And the reason I'm bringing this up, and this is what we have to be conscientious about. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this because it is an issue that those with Aquarius in placements and those with Piscean placements often get tripped up on. Okay. And I need to say this in a way. And if you've got a lot of Aquarius placements and you've got a lot of Piscean placements, I want you to listen to me very carefully, right? Reality is not the place where your dreams go to get messed up. And I know even as I'm saying this, okay? And I know even as I'm saying that, there's a bunch of Aquarians and Pisceans going, that's not true. It's like, but yeah, it's where they become reality, right? Because here's the thing about the dream space. Everything exists there and it's nowhere, right? Here's the beautiful thing about the dream space. Everything is perfect in the dream space. But when we understand the quality of the dream space is such by which everything is there, but everything is also nowhere, then we understand that the recognition of bringing things into the tangibility space is the space by which we have to heal our perfection. And I got to tell you right now, because often we see that in the journey of Virgo energy, but it's something that is very energetically important, particularly in relationality to those with Aquarian and Piscean placements, because Aquarians often look at the dream space as the place by which they aspire to work. Right? Aquarians like to look at the dream space and be like, "That's where I work." Right? Pisceans like to look at the dream space by saying, "That's where I play." Right? But, like, Aquarians see the dream space as an office space. Aquarians see it as an office space. Pisceans see it as a playground. But the modality by which we understand that, to a certain extent, the dream space is a lost and found. We identify the space by which when we bring things back from the dream space, we effectively find them because we make them energetically real. And in the space by which we make them real, they often fail to meet the achievement point by which we identify them in the dream space. But that is what happens, right? That is the journey of energetically creating things. Its creation is messy. And the reason we say creation is messy is often feeling the space by which the things that we create often feel like they don't do service to our energetic ideal. But that's why and this is where we get into Virgo, because then Virgo says, "Give me that. I can perfect it." Like Virgo goes, "Give me that. Let me perfect it for you." Right. And this is what we talk about when we talk about the unification work of the signs. Right. This is the unification work of the signs. When we recognize and identify that we are all navigating things with a different perspective element, then that ability of being able to identify and recognize that work is how we heal. Now, the reason this is important right now, even if you do not carry a lot of Piscean or Aquarian energy, and this is what we have to be conscientious about as we move into this particular eclipse cycle. Okay? What do we have that's happening? Is we're going to basically have, right? We're having a Piscean eclipse, right? So a lot of Pisces energy in Aquarius season, which can create the space of having an argument as to what one does with the dream space. Okay. It's like it often creates the energetic conflict point, particularly in relationality to how one energetically chooses to perceive things. So understanding, right? And this is what's beautiful, and I'm just gonna kinda give you this to take into consideration as we move into as we move towards that new moon energy, right? The space by which when we hold something that is important to us, we enjoy speaking about it, right? We enjoy having it fortified. We enjoy the modality by which we are effectively able to move through things because the space by which, right? And I want to describe this. Like this is what we actually talk about with passion, right? The modality by which one is eager to talk about something, right? Even in the modality by which you feel like it gets a little rocked, like healthy things get rocked in the best way possible because it allows you to be able to it allows the space by which one is able to refine and define and perfect it, right? And this is why we talk about we have to be strong in our vulnerability because we can be strong but also be fortified in relationality to articulating upon something that we care about. What do you notice with those who are often in more of an indulgent space, right? It's earmuff energy. It's, I don't want to hear anything. I'm going to go away, right? It's the modality by which we often get really energetically aggressive upon things in the space by which we energetically avoid what it is that we're trying to energetically face. So the reason I say this is I feel like in a way, like this Pisces new moon eclipse energy that we've got coming through is really beautiful as it relates to being able to being able to like get one's energetic homework as it were, right? Being able to really see and identify like what one needs to do. It's very task driven, but it's also kind of those modalities, and this is why I talked about the fact that we often see this, that often the moon 2 moons before the eclipse is a precursor as to what we can expect when we're navigating into the energetic eclipse cycle. So that identification of recognizing, right? We learn to be vulnerable so that we can get stronger. This is what I see that a lot of the energy in solitude is doing right now, right? The identification of understanding that we don't look even when we're not in partnership, we're working on partnership. right? Because when we become good with ourselves, when we're healing, when we are effectively becoming our best version of self, we are preparing ourselves for the ideal energetic counterpart, right? It's not a search. It's not like, oh, where are they? It's not, it's not an energetic search, right? You're not like we're going on. It's not that. It's the space by which you're becoming, right? You embody what you hope to celebrate, right? When you embody, what happens when you embody what you hope to celebrate? That's the healthy manifestation goal, right? It's the modality by which you're energetically welcoming that type of energy towards you in the space by which you're effectively amplifying the fact that you're not looking for it, but you're finding it within. And so that's what I see with a lot of these relationships right now, right? The modality by which either energy is in solitude, saying, that they're literally like they're working on partnership, right? Every day the energy's in solitude going, I'm working on my perfect relationship. Why? I'm getting better and better with myself. I'm finding my joy every day because a healthy manifestation. There is no manifestation on this planet by which joy is going to be on the other side of it. It's a BYOJ situation. You bring your own joy with you. So this is the energy saying, I'm working on my joy every day, a little more joy, every day, a little more joy. And as I move towards that joy, that allows the modality that as I move towards my manifestation goals, right? I'm not moving towards manifestation goals to fix me, moving towards manifestation goals to amplify the joy that one is able to generate. So that's what we see that's happening with right now with a lot of those relationships. And again, what do we see that's happening with some of these new relationships? A bit of hesitation. Why is there hesitation? They're very precious with their joy. Took me a lot of time to make this. Right? Took me a lot of time to make this. I'm very careful with it. Continuing to get clarification between the Six of Cups in its reversal in combination with that Eight of Pentacles in its reversal. Moving back into those moon relationships, we've got here the nine, the Nine of Cups in its reversal. And what are we basically seeing with that Nine of Cups in its reversal? A lot of the work that we see, and I keep on getting, I feel like there's something, this is a lot, there is a lot of this energy I'm picking up with these moon relationships that feels like an energetic pick me up. There's something I'm seeing that's happening right now. And the way I want to describe this is because these moon relationships, remember I said, very, very, very focused on their purpose, right? Purpose driven partnerships. Never before have they been in a relationship where their purpose has not been a problem. Never before have they been in a relationship where their purpose was not a problem. And that's why I see this energy activating in a way that they never have before, both in the space of their person. And it's funny because I was going to say purpose, but when I tried to say purpose, the word came through was person, because it was the modality by which they're looking towards someone and saying, I found my energetic person, because they don't take my purpose personally. They take it profoundly. Continuing to get clarification between the Eight of Pentacles in its reversal and that Magician in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with that Temperance energy in its reversal. Now, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with these Temperance relationships, because it's a little bit more complicated, is what I'm seeing right now with these Temperance partnerships. And I want to describe that for some of these Temperance relationships right now, I feel like one of the things that we're energetically seeing is working through the modality or experience by which they're recognizing the full shape of something that they themselves were healing from, is what I keep on seeing. And I want to describe this, and I want to the best way I can say this. And this is why we talk about, like when we talk about healthy relationship, right? When we say get ready to heal, we mean get ready for someone that's going to see you, right? That's going to see every energetic facet of you. And that's the space by which we understand, right? That the ability to identify or to articulate upon an energetic vulnerability, right? The gift that we give each other by being able to identify and help another person see our own unhealed tendencies, right? This is the gift of the healthy partnership because even through difficult conversations, we have the ability to heal in ways that are profound or ways that feel like they are expansive, right? And so I keep on seeing that in a way, I want to describe that the difference that I'm seeing for some of these temperance relationships is it feels like a slightly painful expansion process. But here's the thing about it. It's not that it's painful in a way that isn't welcoming. It's the painful in relationality to being able to understand that this is why we talk about being able to navigate vulnerability as we expand, because when we expand, we strive to do more. We strive to do better, right? We effectively identify or we feel that energetic stretch, as it were. And so, what we effectively see that's happening right now for a lot of those relationships is recognizing to a certain extent that even in the modality by which they're expanding, they're articulating upon, right? They're articulating upon the space by which they're thinking about things in ways that they never have thought about them before, right? And even through that, I keep on seeing, and this is what we can expect, because, and this is the thing I need to tell you about that we haven't talked about yet. Saturn is also moving into Aries, and moving into Aries often triggers maturation processes. I talked about this last time we did this. It's like I like to describe Saturn moving into Aries as like a pseudo Saturn return moment, because again, this is why I identify that reading into the energy, it feels very similar to that. So it's like you get them like you get some growing pains and you get some growing pains and you get some growing pains. But that ability of being able to articulate and identify, right? The difficulty or the modality by which we recognize that's painful is also why we understand the beauty of it, right? And it's working through the context of change that feels like I keep on hearing like it often. I don't like to call it a heartbreak so much as a heart stretch is the best. We don't have a word for it. Like that's what a heart expansion is, right? It's the opposite of a heartbreak, right? It's feeling the pain in the heart space that doesn't feel like the heart's breaking, but the heart's making room for more love, if you will, right? And so I feel like there's a lot of that. I feel like there's a lot of that we're effectively seeing there. And I feel like that's like the nature of some of the conversations that we see that are happening in those experiences, right? Articulating and defining upon it, but even in the way that they're defining upon it, they're articulating upon how much they themselves have changed in terms of how they perceive things. Now, continuing to get clarification, and we're moving back towards the Knight of Cups in its reversal in combination with that Three of Swords in its reversal. One card to clarify, please, moving back towards the energy and solitude right now. Ooh, we got a star energy there. I like that. But and and here's the thing about it though, and I gotta stress this. This is the thing about the star. Okay. I love the star card. I often feel like the star card is misunderstood. This misunderstood star card right here, right? Because this is the thing about it. Like, and this is what I love about the star card. The star card is literally just minding its own business. Okay. The star card is the star card is literally just like minding its own business. Like, I know you guys talk about the star card. I like to talk about the star card as the life changing power of minding your own business when you're concentrating and focusing on just like plugging away at your exquisite. Okay. Because look, there's like this energy here, just like just vibing, right? Just vibing out. What are they doing? I don't know. It looks weird, but yeah, I'm interested. Like, but this is what we talk about, right? This is what we talk like unbothered. You know what I mean? Like it's like unbothered. Like they're like this is what we talk like this is like the vibe. And I like this too because this is like what we talk about like moving into like Pluto and Aquarius. Like this is what we talk about, which is and I want to point out like the space by which we work through our energetic fear is the modality by which we become fearless. Right? And that doesn't mean like you be absolutely out of your mind not to have any fear. That's not healthy. If you don't have any fear, like I'm concerned about you. That means you don't care about anything. Okay? But the space by which we navigate, right? Like, the space by which we navigate and recognize, like, how we hold the things that we, like, hold dear, right? It's the space by which we don't shy away from talking about it, right? In fact, we'll talk about it more, right? We'll make something uncomfortable because and this is the space about it, like and I like to point this out. This is a journey that we see in Aquarius, right? And the space by which we understand the water bearer, when you think about water as emotions, then it's a conversation about what you do when you feel an energetic overwhelm. It's a conversation on why disassociating is not the same as non-attachment. It looks the same on the outside, and there's a lot of people that misperceive it. But the modality of literally learning how to turn something off is the easiest thing ever, and you never get strong when you learn how to turn things off. There's no strength in disassociating. In fact, it's dangerous because inevitably the day will come when there's so many emotions, right? Right? What happens? Because you can't make energy does not disappear or reappear. So what we often see with Aquarian placements, and this is why you sometimes notice that Aquarians, unhealed Aquarians sometimes have those crash out points, right? The modality by which you're like, oh, it's fine. I can just make these emotions go away. I can just make them go away. No, they're getting into everything, right? They're in the walls, they're in the room, they're everywhere you go. You cannot put something cannot disappear. It has to go somewhere, right? And what happens when we try not to address emotions? They end up everywhere. And often the space by which you say, I don't see them, that's because everybody else is dealing with them, right? Having them in the unconscious is the most dangerous space for emotions to be. But when we're sorting through the emotions, when we're dealing with our own water, what do we do with it? We put them in the right spot. Okay, we tidy up. We move the emotions into the space by which we know they need to go. And that's how we effectively learn to find our flow, which is not the space by which we don't rest at times. We say, like, I need a minute. But even the modality by which we navigate our overwhelm, right? We get stronger. And that's what's amazing about it. And this is what we talk about with the water bearer. Guess what? The more emotions you feel, the more you can take on, right? That's what emotional intelligence is. The more that you feel, the more that you can take on. It's the ability of finding the energetic capacity. But the only way we're able to do so is by being able to feel the energetic enormity of what we're feeling. And so this is the space by which I see a lot of this energy working through those modalities, working through those experiences. And what is the energy saying? Right? It's a lot, but it's not lonely, right? Because this is a lot of the energy that I feel it is in solitude that's articulating and saying, when we think about the fact that the best relationship that we've ever had will make you feel things you've never felt before, then when you have your own emotions, what do you say? More, right? The modality by which you say, I'm ready to feel these. I'm ready to find the balance point within them because I recognize that this is the sound of me energetically preparing for the healthy relationship by which not only will I feel these, but I'll also feel all of the birth of the other energetic emotions that come with healthy connection, right? It's the space by which we understand and we navigate through that allows us to be stronger within them. And this is where we identify, and this is then bringing us to those moon relationships, right? And this is why we see that some of those moon relationships have had wounds, right? And what are the moon relationships healing that feels like it's creating a heart opening? Purpose does not damage anything if we hold the same purpose. Clarification between the Three of Swords in its reversal in combination with Nine of Cups in its reversal. Clarification coming through with that King of Pentacles energy in its reversal, right? Purpose identifies with purpose, allows for the energetic expansion point. But for some of these relationships, I feel like I keep on seeing these moon partnerships are energetically tireless. So I feel like they've had to have relationships by which they've experienced some sort of paradox. And the energetic paradox being the same thing that drove someone towards them, another person then articulated was the energetic problem in a relationship, right? The modality by which this energy has often felt the space by which they've approached relationships very carefully, and often potentially in the modality by which they sometimes push them away, having had wounds by which another person identified the fact that they long to be close to somebody's proximity due to the fact that they saw that purpose, but then was in the relationship and articulated that the purpose was the problem. This is a lot of the energy that I feel is going through a heart opening because they're finally in a relationship with another that holds their purpose as they do their own, right? They don't see it as a situation that needs to exist outside of the door of relationship, but the space by which they hold each other's purposes as they do their own, that allows them to build into the space by which they're able to expand and expound even further upon the space by which they care about. So we see that for a lot of that energy right now, it's hard, and there may be a lot of emotions coming up, right? And I can see the energy, like, in partnership and someone being like, "Why are you so emotional?" And someone being like, "'Cause I've never found this before." And when you find something that you haven't lost and found, the problem is when you find something that's lost, you see something that you couldn't see before. It's when you find something that's lost, you see something that you couldn't see before, and I keep on hearing they're having a profound emotional moment that's deepening the energetic connection. Now, this is bringing us to the temperance relationships. It's a little bit more complicated. Same work, little bit more complicated because the hurdle isn't something seen outside of the self. It's something that's being recognized within. Clarification between the 9 of cups in its upright and the temperance card in its reversal. Yeah, the 8 of swords in its reversal, and the thing is, and there's a lot of 8 energy here on the table today, and the 8 energy that we're seeing on the table, and it feels very much directed towards it's very much directed towards the temperance relationships, and the thing about this energy is this energy is working into the context of identifying and recognizing, and I keep on seeing this, um, the space by which, and I need to describe this energy carries very shared trauma. And the modality by which they carry shared trauma has to do with circumstances and experiences wherein we recognize and understand that for a lot of those relationships, that ability of being able to energetically articulate and define upon what it is that they themselves are trying to do better, right? The space by which they themselves are trying to effectively arrive to themselves. They often have a tendency of being too hard on the self. The modality and the experience by which they often are hard or difficult to the self, that they often are, I keep on saying they have a bit of a tendency of going inward instead of going outward. And everything we see there is a continuation of being able to articulate and identify the means by which we energetically expand. And everything we keep on seeing there, and again, especially with this like 8 of pentacles with the 8 of swords is, and I want to describe this, it often works into the space of being able to have a hard time articulating upon their needs, right? And so I see that this is a lot of the energy that is working on better communication and the experience by which they communicate that allows the possibility of being able to effectively fortify upon their own energetic points of strength. And so I want to describe this because everything I keep on seeing that's happening right now for the temperance relationships is is working through something. Like, it's working through something, but in such a way that they're trying to articulate their needs. And I keep on seeing this, and this is what's hard for those temperance relationships because they found each other in the space by which they often do not articulate their needs. They're very self-sufficient. They're trying to come out. It's basically every time I read for the temperance relationships right now, I'm getting an interdependent system that's trying to become interconnected. And what do I mean by an interdependent system that's trying to become interconnected with this energy that has a hard time articulating to others that they have needs because of the fact that they've experienced trauma in the space of another person taking advantage of the fact that they had needs in the first place that required them to become extremely interconnected, right? The interconnected system of the self that basically says, what does the interconnected system of the self say? I'll do it myself. Okay, I'll do it myself. But the modality by which we understand that when we interconnect, we build into the space that we heal trauma, right? Because it feels vulnerable to ask for things. So we see that that's a lot of energy that's basically getting better. And I can see them, like, they're working through it in such a way they're getting better at asking. And even in the modality by which they do so, there's a space by which they hate to do so, but even in the space by which they recognize that they hate it, they understand that that's why it's important, because they understand that they're getting stronger within it. Continuing to get clarification, moving back towards the energy that's in solitude right now, clarification between that star card and the King of Pentacles in its reversal. We've got the 7 of Swords in its reversal. So let's talk a little bit about that 7 of Swords energy, because the 7 of Swords energy that we're effectively seeing there is working into the modality and the context of healing from the past. And the hard part about that is I just keep on seeing, and I want to point this out, this is all of the energy that we see that's working in solitude right now. Not taking the wrong lessons from past trauma, right? And what is the wrong lesson from past trauma, right? No point in trying, right? Trauma's got hands, and the space by which we understand that is trauma often creates the feeling. Trauma often likes to make itself feel like it is universal, right? And often the way trauma tries to make itself feel universal is via the employment of the ubiquitous they, right? And the ubiquitous they is often something that we have to be wary about, because often you can tell when someone is projecting when they utilize the ubiquitous they that actually means me, right? It's very convenient to employ the ubiquitous they when one is not doing one's shadow work effectively, because when you recognize that the ego likes to make all the problems outside the self, right? Then we often recognize that those who don't do their shadow work properly will often employ the ubiquitous they, because they actually means the me that they're not addressing, right? So the modality by which some of this energy is potentially healing, specifically in relationality to the space by which another person made them feel a lack of worth, not based upon what they themselves were claiming, but what they were trying to say others were saying, right? Some kind of healing that they're going through, where somebody was like, oh, I just wanted to be the one to tell you, being like, it's very interesting when someone employs the ubiquitous they, because it allows the space of another person trying to feel like, you'll often notice that someone unhealed will try to articulate that they are the authority on the ubiquitous they, right? But the identification point of the energy, recognizing and understanding that, is what's allowing the energy to heal, because it's a modality by which they themselves are finding, right? They're finding their I again, right? And they're recognizing that trauma often sounds like the you that's directed towards us, because it's the space of being able to experience all of those energetic echoes from someone who effectively hurt us that come back towards the self. So we see that that's a lot of the energy that's finding that compassion, a bit of the gift of that Leo full moon that we just experienced, that articulates upon, right? Healthy energy sees us, right? They understand the full shape of our intention. They understand what it is that we ourselves are energetically working upon. And so I see that for a lot of that energy, that ability of identifying, I keep on hearing there's energy in solitude that's connecting to the expansiveness of the self that defies definition, that allows one to be able to remember and reclaim what was energetically valuable and important to them. So there's a lot of deep healing that we see that's happening right now for a lot of this energy and solitude. And a lot of that work we see is understanding and taking a valuation point in the full force of the trauma that they themselves are carrying. And for some of these new relationships that are coming together, right? This is why I almost feel like I keep on hearing like a healthy trepidation, but almost I keep on hearing an intuitive healthy trepidation because they recognize and they identify each other continuing to do that work, right? Like they're finding each other in a modality of extreme tenderness. Now, this is continuing towards those moon relationships, clarification between the King of Pentacles in its reversal and that Eight of Swords in its reversal. One card to clarify. Two of Swords in its reversal. So let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing right now with that Two of Swords and its reversal energy. There's a lot of sword energy here, but I want to point out I'm not upset about how much sword we see on today's spread. All of the swords are reversed. All of the swords are reversed. And that is important because it is the space by which we articulate and define upon being energetically exact. And this is what I like about these moon relationships, right? These moon relationships, I want to stress this, like these moon relationships are very, very quick, is what I keep on. They're very, very quick. And even in the experience, like I keep on saying, even in the experience by which they work through things, I want to describe that it's actually the reason I see that they're moving with even more, like with even more energetic speed, if you will, right? A lot of that speed that we're effectively identifying or recognizing is in relationality to working through situations and circumstances by way of being able to energetically articulate the energetic, I keep on saying the easement that they have in being in a connection by which they feel the space of being able to articulate and define upon what it is that they energetically mean. And even in the space by which they articulate and define upon what they mean, I keep on seeing the healing that's coming through is in the space by which they feel like they're not working through the modality of feeling the anxiety of another individual harboring, is what I keep on getting. Right? Like this is what I like about these moon relationships feel like they're in a space of absolute transparency. And the space by which they're energetically transparent is it's not that everything is perfect between them, but when something's not, they resolve it just as quickly as it comes up, right? It's like a harbor-free environment because I see the energy that's almost like if there's an issue, let's address it because it just allows us to kind of move through things more effectively. This brings us to this brings us to the energy that's the temperance relationships. Clarification between the Seven of Swords in its reversal and that Two of Swords in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification, two cards. And we have here the Hanged Man in its reversal in combination with the Ace of Wands in its reversal. So let's talk a little bit about the energy that we're effectively seeing between these two cards. This is a continuation of being able to recognize that this is why it's a little bit more difficult for those temperance relationships right now, right? Because the modality by which, and I want to describe, and this is how we can tell the difference right now between the energy that's deep within divine union and the energy that's coming into divine union, because the energy coming into divine union is being able to effectively identify and recognize energetic hurdles, specifically and particularly as it relates to being able to feel the easement, like being able to resolve things between each other feels like it's very energetically easy. But for the energy deep within divine union, working through the modality or the experience by which they themselves are identifying or working through a limitation, right? A limitation of the self that was created at a time by which the trauma required it in order to energetically preserve the self, is what I keep on seeing, right? That it's interesting too, because I keep on saying it's a complicated partition because it's the understanding and recognition of an adaptability point within the self that was effectively creating the space by which another person was able to thrive when they were in a trauma environment. This is what we talk about the journey feeling like it takes a lifetime, because sometimes it's the observation of a quality or tendency in the self, right? It's the recognition that it's there, right? And it's, I keep on saying, it's the energy that works to effectively move that away just as carefully as it was energetically erected, because I see that that's the energy that effectively holds compassion, right? They're having compassion towards it as they work through it because they understand the nature by which it takes time to be able to energetically resolve something of that nature. So I keep on seeing that for a lot of those relationships, right? Like that ability of doing so, it's slow, right? It's slow, it's necessary, it's careful, but it's also something that I keep on seeing that as they do so every day, they get just a bit more stronger in each and every way. Bottom of the deck on this reading with the Two of Wands in its reversal. What we're effectively identifying with a lot of that Two of Wands in its reversal is working into the space of healthy communication. Now, I want to describe this here, right? One of the things that we see that often can create frustration right now is working into the context of articulating upon energetic plans. Now, one of the things that we may see, especially in terms of working through this month is, and I want to describe this, if you felt like things were like moving at a snail's pace during the retrograde season, you may feel like a lot of things are happening all at once, right? I'm just going to remind you, when a lot of things are happening, right? Don't fall into like, don't move into a disassociative state. But remember, things become achievable when we make them smaller. If something feels like it's too overwhelming, just break it into a smaller piece, because that ability of being able to effectively recognize and realize, right? Those tiny approaches that we take to things that allow things to effectively feel energetically fortifying and productive. I keep on seeing that this is a lot of the energy that is getting stronger and more comfortable in being able to articulate and define what it is that they have their heart set upon. And so I feel like that's a lot of the energy. Like I wouldn't be surprised if this is a time of hard conversations that also feel energetically groundbreaking, because it's the modality or the experience by which the energy is able to effectively define what that plan is, that allows another to be able to identify the empathy that we ourselves are experiencing. So I feel like there's something really important there in relationality to those conversations. And I want to say this again, like and I want to describe this, it's better out than in, right? Which is not the space by which we say, I shouldn't say anything, right? If something's bothering you, don't take this as a sign that says you shouldn't talk about it. But remember, a healthy conversation has directions attached to it, something that we're able to define and articulate that allow us to be able to do something in an even better fashion. That is our daily collective read for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and experiencing it. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, it is a two-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you'd like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my site, so I would encourage you to do it there. A couple of updates before we move into personal readings today. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who participated in our recent class on the World Card. Our next class is going to be held on Wednesday, February 18th at 6 p.m. PST, 9 p.m. Eastern. We will be continuing our studies into the tarot with a focus on the court cards of the Sword Suite. If you'd like to become part of that tarot class program, all you need to do is head on over to my stack and become a paid subscriber. Your paid subscription to my stack is your ticket of entry into our live classes each and every month. As a paid subscriber, you will also have access to over 20 hours worth of material 9 hours worth of material in the Tarot Church Library class archive. It's not necessary to catch up. I'll be doing my best to give you an update on everything we've studied prior to beginning that next class, but the material is there for you to receive as you're ready to receive it. You'll also have access to a complimentary you'll also have access to a one-on-one chat with me and the other students to ask any questions it may have in relationality to anything we've learned and studied. And if you become a founding member, not only will you receive a discount on the full year's worth of readings, but you'll also have access to over 20 hours worth of material in the Tarot Church Library class archive. You'll also have access to the opportunity of receiving a mentorship class with me where I will meet with you personally to assess where you are on your own personal tarot journey and give you the best insights in terms of how to utilize those classes to the best of your advantage, moving towards your tarot goals going forward. One of the things I tried to do in these classes was make them accessible to the absolute novice tarot reader as well as the seasoned reader. There's definitely something there for everyone. Don't let your lack of experience or your robust experience prevent you from joining us in these classes. And even if you don't become a paid subscriber to my stack, I would encourage you to follow me there to stay up to date on any new offerings or services. I also post my weekly newsletter there, which will let you know about my in-person events as well as my online live schedule. I'd also like to invite you over there to learn more about a very special retreat that I'll be hosting this August. I'd like to invite you to join us August 8th through 13th as we will be traveling to Italy to study the tarot in the location by which the tarot was first documented to be discovered, sharpening our tarot skills while also understanding the culture by which the tarot was able to grow and thrive. Everyone who participates in that retreat will not only be receiving one-on-one training with me, but will also have the opportunity of receiving a complimentary mentorship class with me in addition to the retreat itself. You can learn more about that over on my stack and over on my link tree. And this is the final week to pre-register in order to get a $200 discount on the entire retreat package. I also want to let you guys know that even if you don't become a subscriber to my stack, I would encourage you to follow me there because that's where I also post my mystic meditation articles, which give you updates on what we've been seeing energetically in the cards. I just wrote one recently on this full moon that we experienced, and I'll be reading one shortly on this new moon we've got coming up. And I want to let you guys know that on top of my standard life path readings, I also offer mentorship classes. These are for any of my students that are seeking a more personalized educational experience with me. I take a very limited number of students for this reason, as those classes are focused on each individual's personal spiritual goals and journey work. Those classes can be purchased on an individual level or as a monthly class series, weekly or biweekly as your schedule permits. Also, for my students that are seeking more consistent weekly tarot support, I'm very happy to offer weekly tarot insight packages. That is a package of 4 30-minute readings, again, weekly or biweekly as your schedule permits, so that you can stay more consistent on your personal journey. And I'm also very happy to now offer dream interpretation readings, which you can purchase per dream or as a series. If you purchase a series, I would encourage you to start to keep a dream journal as we will meet weekly or biweekly with that journal and utilize the tarot to understand the key themes and messages coming towards you in the dream space. I want to thank you guys so much for being here today and sharing in these messages. And we will do this again tomorrow. That is our daily collective read for today. We are